Welcome to Great Loop Radio, brought to you by America's Great Loop Cruisers Association. We're dedicated to sharing Great Loop information and inspiration with those actively cruising, planning for, or dreaming about a Great Loop adventure. I'm Kim Russo. I'm the director of AGLCA. Today's podcast episode is going to be one of our Docktales events, so sit back and relax while Steve and Carol aboard Jadip share the tales of their Great Loop adventure. Before we jump in, I do want to take a moment to recognize and thank our Admiral sponsors who support AGLCA at the highest level. They are Curtis Stokes & Associates, Passage Maker Trawlerfest, Skipper Bob Publications, and Waterway Guide Media. As always, we encourage our listeners to support these businesses that support the Great Loop. We're going to go ahead and play a message from one of our sponsors, and once that is finished, we will jump right into this edition of Docktales, so stay tuned.
Welcome to Beneteau by invitation. This new concept was born from a very simple idea. Offer your family an opportunity to meet ours in a fun, exclusive, and safe environment that mirrors the way our boats feel. Jump aboard our latest models, go for a private sea trial, and let us talk together about our common passion for the sea. There's a Beneteau by invitation event coming soon to a harbor near you, so come experience what everyone is talking about. Contact your local dealer, get your boarding pass, and we will see you on the water. Welcome to Beneteau by invitation. This new concept was born from a very simple idea. Offer your family an opportunity to meet ours in a fun, exclusive, and safe environment that mirrors the way our boats feel. Jump aboard our latest models, go for a private sea trial, and let us talk together about our common passion for the sea. There's a Beneteau by invitation event coming soon to a harbor near you, so come experience what everyone is talking about. Contact your local dealer, get your boarding pass, and we'll see you on the water.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Docktales. This is a Facebook Live event hosted by AGLCA. We are so excited today to have our guests with us. But before we kind of bring them in and really get started, I do want to share what we are doing today. For those of you who have not joined us, Docktales is kind of a looper tradition as everyone gets tied up at the dock for the day and brings their favorite beverage. It is typically happy hour time, which is why we do these at 5 o'clock here on the East Coast. And this version of Docktales, it's usually a spin on cocktails, but this one is Docktales with a T-A-L-E-S, which is because we have gold loopers coming here to share their stories with us. So I'd like to introduce Steve and Carol Churchill, who are new gold loopers. Steve and Carol, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you. It's our pleasure.
And you are still on the boat after having just become gold loopers, just crossed your wake. Where are you coming to us from today?
Currently, we're in Chicago, and we're on our way south, headed down the rivers, of course, cross the Florida Bight. And when we hit St. Petersburg, through the vagaries of the routes that we've been taking, we will actually hit platinum. And since we hit gold just a couple of weeks ago, that's quite a shock.
It is unique, and your path through the Great Loop, so to speak, has been pretty unique as well. And I definitely want to dive into that because you shared those details in a very poignant and very entertaining post to our members forum. And of course, not everybody here on Facebook is an AGLCA member, so not everyone knows your story yet. But let's start a little bit at the beginning. First of all, tell us about your boat that you did the Great Loop aboard and what previous boating experience you had.
Okay. The boat we have is a Great Harbour N37, 37 feet. It's got two small Yanmar engines. Together, we have a whopping 108 horsepower, which is seems small, but it's the way the boat is designed. One engine can get us up to cruising speeds, which we've had the opportunity to go over 500 miles on one engine to get to the yard that we want to have fix it. But it's got lots of tankage, lots of fuel. We've got about a 2,000 mile range on the 500 gallon diesel. We've got over 300 gallons of water and 100 plus gallons of black water. So we can be out for several weeks without touching shore or a marina for pump out or provisioning.
Mhm.
Very, very comfortable boat. We have a lot of friends who say, who offer to let us stay at their house, in the guest room or something like that, to give us a break from the boat. And we always kind of answer, well, this is our home. This is where we enjoy living, and we're comfortable, and we don't need to have a break from the boat. You want to add some?
What sold me on the boat was the galley. The kitchen or the galley in this boat is almost as big as my kitchen was at our small house that we had. I have a full-size refrigerator. I've got a bar that goes around the cabinet, microwave oven, convection oven, double sink.
Lots of cabinets.
Regular size cabinets versus, little cubby holes that are 8 inches deep or something like that. So it really does allow us to plan to cook on the boat as much as we want. And that turned out really convenient with COVID last year. So we can hit a grocery store about once a month. Now, I can't say we only do it once a month, but we could.
Yeah.
We like our fresh veggies.
Mhm. Well, and the Great Harbour is an extremely spacious boat.
Yeah,
and
we've got a bosun locker that's the size of a U-Haul trailer, and that's just for storage. We store 2 bicycles and well, a whole walk-in closet full of tools and parts and TP and everything else. The other thing I really love, and which when we give tours of the boat, most of the women love the galley.
Mhm.
And most of the men love the engine room because for a 37-foot boat, it has a walk-in, stand-up engine room, which is extremely unusual on a boat this size. And it's very easy to get all around both engines.
Even for you at 6 feet.
Even for me, there's a spot. I'm almost 6'1". I can stand up in one spot. Most of the time, I have to hunch over. But somebody who's like 5'8", 5'9" wouldn't even have to bend over. It's a really great engine room. And of course, guys spend a lot of time in the engine room. Sometimes that's where I go to meditate.
That's his man cave.
Well, and for anyone who's not come across the Great Harbour, it just doesn't look like a 37. It just looks like this enormous boat. And I've had people look at them at our rendezvous and go, "Can that really get under that bridge on the Illinois Waterway?" Yes, it can. And in fact, Carol, as you were saying, the Great Harbour was the first boat I ever was aboard during one of our looper crawls that had the full-size fridge, which kind of made me go, "Ooh, I want one of these."
The freezer is nice. You can add a lot of things to it. But it only has a 3-foot draft. I think that's really important because that keeps our worries down too.
That has saved at least my backside, especially Hell Gate one time when I went around the wrong side of the mark, which was not a good place to do. Yeah.
And we'll talk about some of your trials and tribulations along the way.
The other thing that's really important for some people, which was really important for us, was the high railings. They go all around the boat. We've got a full walk around that's wide. I don't have to hold on to anything. Like some of you have to sort of walk sideways and scoot. Well, we can literally walk around the whole boat, and the railings are up to my waist. So that keeps me from falling. I could bend over, and I've got vertigo issues. So that was huge for us.
Yeah, very looper-friendly boat. I'm hearing a little bit of that echo we heard before, so if you can turn your speaker down but still hear me, I want you to be able to hear me. So we'll deal with the echo if we need to, but if we can find a happy medium, that might be more pleasant for the people watching.
All right, let's try that. See if that I put it down another 20 points.
That is better.
Okay,
There's
good.
Slightly, but it's definitely better. And like I said, you need to be able to hear me, but that is much better. So we've got a couple of shout-outs here from some of your fellow loopers. Ahoy from Reverie. I don't know if you've come across Pete and Susan, but I imagine you did along the way. Hi, Pete and Susan. Thanks for joining us. And Susan Costa and Greg from Lucky Me Looping are here with us.
Good. Oh, yeah. Hi, guys.
They helped us with our gold celebration.
Yeah.
Yep, and they're out there cruising. So, yeah, you'll probably be running into them repeatedly. And then some other new gold loopers from R&R. They're saying nice to see you. Hi, Rhonda. Good to see you. Hi, Rick. So yeah, great to have some of our gold loopers with us, and of course, I think all of those we just mentioned are all gold loopers, if I'm not mistaken. I think the Webbs have crossed their wake on Reverie as well, and I know Susan and Greg Costa are on their second time around, so they're going for platinum as well. So neat stuff. Um, so you've talked a little bit about your boat. Tell us the name and how you came up with the name, because those are usually fun stories.
I'll give you the shortened version. The name of the boat is, I say Jadip. I've been told that grammatically that is an incorrect pronunciation. It should be Jadip, Jadip. It's an acronym for Just Another Day in Paradise. Oh, yes.
There it is.
We've got a little embroidered shirts. And I saw a movie. It was about bicycling the Ram, the Race Across America, which is a 24/7 bicycle race from the West Coast to East Coast. It's incredibly grueling. It's a exercise in sleep deprivation. And one of the competitors was an orthopedist who had a little plate on his bicycle that said Jadip. And they asked him what it was. He said, just another day in paradise. He says, because, if I happen to die doing this, I'm doing what I want to do. This is paradise for me, and that's kind of what doing the loop is for us. We're literally having the time of our lives. I can't think of anything better I'd love to be doing, especially during this time of my life.
But so you definitely had your challenges along the way. And one of the things that your forum post kind of announcing that you had crossed your wake did was kind of poked fun at those circumstances where some things beyond your control, or maybe a little in your control, happened. But one of the things that was interesting is that you kind of started off saying that you didn't have a clue. But in reality, you did have some boating experience, and you did take some classroom training, so to speak. So tell us a little bit about your experiences prior to the loop.
Well, my experience, I've been sailing boats since I was a teenager. I was in the Sea Scouts, not the Boy Scouts, which is, and you learn a whole bunch of stuff on that. Plus, I've, at the time, just gobbled up sea lore and all sorts of things. I read Chapman's all the way through, which I've forgotten most of it because it was a long time ago. But just because I enjoyed reading about it, sort of thing. And this was all before I was, 16 or 17 years old. But as a consequence, I love rope work and all that. And I've been sailing, most of my life. And Carol kind of came into sailing.
Small boats.
Small boats. Everything we had would fit on a trailer, and would most of them would fit in the garage if we, poked and prodded here and there. Nothing big, nothing. The most complicated one was 21 feet long and had a 2-horse outboard kicker on it for an iron wind. But nothing near as complex as what we got into here. And Carol has most of her sailing. Well, I pretty much all. Did you sail before you knew me?
Yeah, a little bit.
A little bit. Okay. So we took those sailboats and we kind of camp cruised on those, especially in North Carolina and Pamlico Sound, Lake Norman, Lake Jordan. Lots and lots of years of sailing that boat around and getting into little dunk holes and nooks and crannies. I still remember waking up one morning behind Roanoke Island we were anchored in a whole foot of water. And we were awakened by a pod of dolphins who were circling us, and it was their breathing coming to the surface and that woke us up. And it was like magical. It was like, wow, you don't get this down at the local campsite.
But we didn't have anything on the Intracoastal Waterway. We had navigation around Pamlico Sound, maybe, and lakes. Pretty much lakes. We've done some racing in small boats on Lake Norman, several boats we crewed for, things like that. But we didn't have very much. And so when we took the cruising course with Captain Chris, and it was right next to their diesel engine course, we were sucking it in. I mean, it was trying to get everything. Because I grew up working on engines with my dad sometimes on the car. But so I wanted to know, how the engines were working. Because if something happened to Steve, I figured I've got to know what to do with this. Or if one of us is steering, the other person has to know what to do to get through there. So I wasn't afraid of it. I just knew nothing about it.
Yeah.
And so the course was really good for us to help. Did I read the book? Nah, I'm not as good with books. I'm a very visual learner. So the course was really good for me. And then we actually, when we got the first oil change, I remember we paid the guy to do one and then watch Steven do the other one. And I'm watching the whole time, but we would do that the first few times we got things checked or looked after. And that was, explain to the guy, I know we're going to be pains in the butts, but we're going to be right there watching you because we got to learn about this stuff.
Yeah, because you're traveling. I mean, you don't have access to the same mechanic every time. So,
everybody was good about it.
And I'm pretty mechanical, and I'm good with tools. I got a lot of tools. In fact, one of the things I had to do was remove about 1,000 pounds of tools after we'd been on the boat a year, because I finally figured out I was never going to use those particular ones. But I sucked down Nigel Calder's diesel engine book and his the other one with all the assorted systems, which I still haven't gotten through all the electrical stuff. Electrical systems is my weakest subject. And when I see Jim Healy do something on the forum, I have to get out some sort of technical manual to even understand what he's writing about.
I know this feeling.
Yeah.
So you went, for those who are just joined, we're chatting with Steve and Carol Churchill. They are new gold loopers who just crossed their wake aboard a Great Harbour 37. So Steve and Carol, you talked about your experience had been, a 21-foot sailboat. So, and again, the 37 Great Harbour is massive. It is different than other 37s. It is a big, heavy boat. So you talked about leaving the docks to start out on your great loop, and in your words, you had not a clue, and you wrote it that way.
Oh, yeah.
And you had a pretty exciting first few minutes. So tell us what happened as you pulled away from the dock to start your great loop.
We have some good friends who also have an N37 who, when they bought their boat, the previous owners spent a week with them going through all the systems, showing them where all the dials and buttons and levers and everything, all the little quirks of the boat. We had a whole 5 minutes of the guy turning engines on while I'm watching, not really explaining stuff, just kind of doing it. And then we started moving out.
So it was just a matter of circumstance. I mean, it wasn't anything nasty or anything.
Well, he wasn't trying to be.
He was trying to be helpful, but it was limited. Anyway, just go ahead.
In any case, the next day when we started, and we made it, we took the boat and we went from Melbourne down to Fort Pierce, and we managed to dock it on a wall dock, or not a slip. Actually, it was a fuel dock. And with a lot of help, we got it in. But the next morning, the boat requires several switches to be thrown before you can actually start the engines without all sorts of alarms going off. And I could not remember the exact sequence he had. So we literally spent about a half an hour trying to start the engines without all sorts of alarms. And then when we got the engines started, and I go, okay, fine. And I shoved the throttles forward and the engines revved up, and okay, good. All right, go ahead and let go of the dock lines. And we let go of the dock lines, and I put put the throttles forward, and the engines revved up, and the boat didn't move. And we started drifting away from the dock, and I kept trying to get something to work. And what it was is we got electronic shifting, and it was in a warm-up mode where the transmissions are disconnected from the engines, or they're in neutral.
We hadn't read that book.
And I hadn't read that book, and I didn't know that. And we actually were there. We didn't have the manual on the boat. We had a printout of the manual, a printout of half the manual for the electronic controls.
I'm pulling it up on the phone.
And unfortunately, it was not the half that had this particular item. So Carol was frantically looking it up on the phone, and she found it. We figured out what it was. It was just another little button to push, and whoa, magic! It works, you know. So it was, and by that time we were out in the middle of the channel and still drifting around, and runabouts and other people are coming out of the marina and just kind of sidling around us, and we're wildly waving, saying, "Nah," It was a
rough start,
exciting introduction to large boat piloting. Yes,
I like exciting. So for those of you joining us on Facebook Live, you are welcome to type your questions into the comments. We can see those here, and we can ask those to Steve and Carol if you have questions for them or for me. Just feel free to type those into the comments, and we'll address them as quickly as we can. So, Steve and Carol, one of the things that helped you with what you were finding to be a pretty large learning curve to go from your 21-foot sailboat to this big 37-foot Great Harbour was that you found some mentors along the way, pretty quickly, in fact. So tell us a little bit about how that came about, because many of us who are struggling in the beginning would love to come across a mentor. Was that just, a leap of faith that you were in the right place at the right time, or was this, how did that relationship come about?
It was a true act of serendipity. We went to Cracker Boys to get some work done that they found on the survey. And at the same time, Henry and Debbie Denning, who at the time were the president and secretary of the GHCA, the Great Harbour Trawler Association. And we went over and talked to them and said hi and all that stuff. And they were getting their boat painted. And by the time they got done and we got done, and we're starting up the ICW, the timing was perfect. They were basically leaving the same time we were. And after, chatting with them and having dinner with them and stuff like that, they kind of realized that we were novices. Of the most primitive form, and they would put their little protection envelope of protection around us by just following them through, especially the swamps of Florida, or not swamps, but the Florida IC. Oh, excuse me, not Florida. Yeah, Georgia ICW.
It came out one night that she says, "We really think you guys ought to follow us through Georgia first." And somewhere in that trip, every day we were talking on the phone. Deb and I would compare notes, and the guys were driving and they're comparing notes, and we talk back and forth on the radio, and we'd ask questions about things. And she taught us about plotting your course, but having a couple of bailouts along the way in case things change, or if you get there faster than you think, then you can go further and you've got another option. It taught us about reading the maps better, timing the tides, because we haven't been in tides.
No clues. Never had to deal with tides before. And of course, Georgia tides are awful.
Well, Georgia tides are 8 feet compared to, 1.5 feet or 2 feet in Florida.
Yeah.
Yep.
And we've gotten used to that, but 8 feet we weren't. And then that, of course, predicts, if you look at it right, it'll predict how deep your water is going to be when you get there. And they showed us some areas where it got pretty shallow on us, and we're looking out the side and we can see the mud flats pretty close. They've since dredged Jekyll Island, so hopefully nobody will see that anymore. But anyway, at some point along the way, I remember she says, "Carol, don't worry about it. When we started, we were clueless too." The word hadn't really come out as totally clueless before that. But, that's really the right word.
Yeah. Well, and Henry and Deb are loopers also. So were they on the loop at the time, or were they just doing some East Coast cruising?
They did not do the loop that time. They were actually, they and we and quite a number of other Great Harbour boats were headed for New Bern for the annual meeting that was being held there that year. GHTA meeting, yeah. And fortunately, as we went up, we were having already by that time some problems with our port engine shaft. So we stopped to have a mechanic look on it. They left and went on ahead, but the mantle was taken up by Richard and Karen Lynch, who have a GH-37 just like ours. So we were kind of
N37.
shepherded. N37, you're right.
It's a GH.
So we were kind of shepherded all the way to New Bern by other Great Harbor boats, and like the word got out.
One time we had 3 escorts.
Yeah, 3 other boats.
2 behind us and 1 ahead. They weren't going to let us get lost as we went offshore.
And one guy called me up, and I heard that we were having a problem, and it might be a transmission problem. And he actually had a spare one on board, and if I needed, he would send it to me wherever I was, and we'd sort it out later. So it was. I'm kind of focusing on the GHTA, but the loopers in general are exactly the same way. They'll take the shirt off your back. Off their back, not your back, to help out. And especially the harbor hosts. I've never had so many strangers just do wild things without any prompting or dire circumstances. They're really out to help.
A lot of them come up and find you, and that's harbor hosts and other loopers.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I really love about loopers as well, is they're just very, across the board, just very kind-hearted, generous spirits, willing to help others. And most of them, like you, were mentored along the way and are very interested in paying that forward. So we do have a question for you. First of all, Karen and Eric Martin. Hey, Karen and Eric, hope you guys are well. They home port at Shreveport Marina. But you are actually on the boat now, I believe. Eric and Karen are getting ready to do the loop, picking up the new to them boat. So I believe they are along the East Coast somewhere, if I'm not mistaken, but maybe they'll chime in again and let us know. And Cam has a question for you, and I think I know the answer to this just based on reading a little bit of your story. But why don't you go ahead and fill everyone in on what was the most challenging navigation experience you had on the loop?
Easy.
Yeah. There's a real easy answer. It's not even a contest. Once you make that going backwards on the loop, i.e. clockwise, once you go down the Ohio River and make that right turn to go up the Mississippi, particularly at the time when we did, where because we actually left later than you would normally leave, because we knew there was a lot of spring flooding on the rivers, and to avoid that, we left in June and then took our time, and then we got stuck in Dog River for 3 weeks just waiting for the Tom Bigby to come down, because just after we arrived, another tropical storm went through and loaded it.
Yeah, we were there for that tropical storm.
In case we had about a total of another month of waiting around in port for the rivers to come down out of flood stage. Now, that doesn't mean it's down to normal pool levels. It just means it's not, spilling over the banks or the levees.
Well, July 4th, we were at Demopolis.
Yeah.
So it was mid-July when we got to Mississippi.
So when we got to Mississippi, it was not at flood stage, but it was like a fraction of a tiny, minuscule bit below flood stage. And along with that was a lot of current, a whole lot of crap coming down at you.
A lot of current being 5 to 6 miles an hour.
Yes, at least 6 miles an hour of a current. And
against you.
The way to go up the current was to hug the bank. And literally, I could do an underhand toss of a large rock and still hit the bank. That's how close we were. We were in 30, 40 feet of the bank. But there's wing dams all the way up the Mississippi, and you have to swing out into the current to get around those or go over them. And since it's flood stage, you really don't have an idea how much water is over those wing dams.
Because even if the wing dam was deep enough, there was debris caught on it, and so it would get stuck.
Yeah.
So that was better to avoid, and there was so much turbulence, you couldn't tell what was causing the turbulence.
We saw a lot of swirls, a lot of whirlpools, a lot of you're really trying to read the water, because there's a lot of stuff that isn't on the surface, but just under, that can really hurt you big time. So just going that 186 miles from the turn of the Ohio all the way up to Chain of Rocks Lock, which is where the current stops,
Yeah.
was the most grueling part of the entire loop, of any part of the loop, and that includes going off New Jersey in an east wind, which was not pleasant, but it was not dangerous.
Well, our boat also goes only about 8 miles an hour, and so
Yeah.
when we're going against 5 or 6 in the middle, so every time we cut out, we'd slow down. If we stayed along the side, we could go about 4 miles an hour.
Yeah, we got four and a
So
half
we creeped.
along the
Thanks for a
thing,
long
but
day.
every time we had to go out, to go under a bridge or go around a dike or something like that, it was like, oh.
And you couldn't use autopilot, so we were switching
Oh,
off
yeah.
every hour and a half to 2 hours because you're like this, and then you're going back this way, so you can get out of the way of something coming.
Yeah, total concentration on driving, and with all the crap that's in the water, you can't avoid it all. We went through Dismal Swamp, 3 times now,
Easy.
and we got like 2 bumps in the total of time. In the first 3 hours of the Mississippi River, we had at least a dozen bumps and a couple of whams. I was worried. Geez,
But we didn't bend any propellers or anything. We did fine.
Yeah, we got real lucky. That's another thing I like about the boat, is that the running gear is like most single-engine boats. They're in skegs with sand shoes, so the rudders and props are very protected from sort of things that can snag them.
Yeah. So a couple of points I want to bring out about that story. That was based on Cam's question about the most challenging navigation experience that you had on the loop. What might not be obvious to many of the people watching so far is that you did part of the loop counterclockwise, which is kind of the usual way, but you did part of it clockwise, which is kind of the unusual way to do it. And this experience on the Mississippi was during the section when you were going clockwise. But that said, flood conditions on the Mississippi are often pointed to as the most treacherous portion of the loop by loopers if they were going through the Mississippi during flood stage. And sometimes when you're going clockwise, of course, that current is with you, which can make it almost even a little bit more challenging because it's giving you that extra speed that makes it a little bit harder to control. So while you are somewhat unique in that you were going clockwise at that point, many loopers have experienced that same issue of debris after a flood on the Mississippi and point to it as one of not the experiences they would like to repeat. So thank you for sharing that story. And for those of you watching, we are taking your questions, and Cam kind of has a follow-up on that. Thanks for sharing. June seems a little earlier than what's suggested for the loop. Is it better than the fall in terms of flood conditions? So spring is actually known as the flood season on the rivers, and if you add tropical weather like we've seen this year, it can get even worse. But spring is the typical flood season. June is probably a little bit late in the typical flood season. So, and again, Cam may not have realized you were going the other way at the time. But did you wait for the bulk of the floods to pass before you started up in June and July?
Yeah, we'd hoped that all the spring floods would be over with and all the rivers would be down near normal levels for the summer.
And that would have been usual.
But this was a particularly wet spring. The Midwest got deluged by just trains of weather systems coming through and dumping water. So it was unusually high all spring and well into the summer. And surprisingly enough, now the complaint is that the Mississippi's down. So all that water's gone.
Yeah, and as you get further south, that's less of an issue with some of that tropical moisture, as I've been describing. But yeah, there is low water on the Illinois waterway, the Mississippi, right now. Karen Martin chimed back in there. Actually, it's Shady Harbor, which is an AGLCA sponsor, getting the boat ready to go. So that's great to hear, Karen and Eric. We're excited to see you on your way around the loop. They've been members for quite some time now, so it's great to see them getting ready to get going. So, Carol and Steve, this might be a good time to kind of fill the people watching in on your unique path through the loop, meaning you went one direction and came back, went the other direction, and now you're on your way back again. So kind of tell us how that all evolved, because it is pretty unique, and it is what, as Steve said in the beginning, They just crossed their wake, making them gold loopers, but they're not far from also becoming platinum, which is, again, very unique. So tell us how all that came about.
Well, we started out in 2018 with the intention of doing the loop in 1 year, as pretty much most people, I think, would be trying to do. But we had mechanical problems. We got basically held up for 2.5 months on the hard in the middle Chesapeake. Mobjack Bay, about that area. And that killed our Canadian window. It was too long. By the time we got out, it was already middle August. We couldn't start up the coast and go through Canada and come back down with the time left over. So we went back to Florida and overwintered in St. Petersburg. In 2019, we started St. Petersburg, went down across the Okeechobee and up the East Coast, Hudson River, Erie Canal to the Oswego Canal, and then over to Kingston, and then the Trent Port, which, by the way, I think is the best marina in the entire loop. If it's not, there are several others that are very close, but that's a very, very good one.
And that's another AGLCA sponsor. So we thank Trent Port Marina for their support, and that's where Eric and Karen, when they're not on their boat getting ready to loop, that's where they are home ported. Yeah.
And then we went across the Trent Severn. Again, I'd love to do that again. That was fabulous. And I hope there's circumstances we can do it in the future. Over to Georgian Bay, and then Georgian Bay up to North Channel. And we had some other things going on that pretty much put us way at the back of the looper hump, or, the mode. Forget it.
The camera's backwards, yeah.
This camera is really confusing.
It is.
We had two Bichons, and one of them was very, very sick. And we had stopped at assorted veterinarians along the way, and that put us farther and farther back, almost 6-8 weeks behind anybody who would have started at the same time we were. So by the time we got to, and in Georgian Bay, in fact, we had to put that pet down, which was quite disheartening also. So by the time we hit Drummond Island, it was already September. And in fact, our introduction to Drummond Island was 3 days, or what's 8 days of 30-mile-an-hour gales. And
45-mile-an-hour winds.
Okay, 45-mile-an-hour winds.
I remember it. It was traumatic. We tried to drive over the Mackinac Bridge for several times, and driving over that bridge was nerve-wracking.
That's fun in a big high wind. Yes, when the car, not the boat, but the car lifts off the thing. But in any case, we decided we'd had enough for that year, so we put the boat on the hard in the heated storage at Drummond Island over the winter. And then
wonderful place, by the way.
With the idea that the next year we would cruise around North Channel and Georgian Bay, which is by report the most beautiful and magnificent part of the whole loop. But we kind of moved through rather quickly because we're trying to get going south. And we would have liked to see more of. But then in December 2019,
I have no idea.
COVID happened.
No, that wasn't December. That was February. But anyway.
Whatever. Anyway.
COVID came along, and we had stuff going on at home. But Drummond Island doesn't really open until
June.
Almost June. And I didn't realize that the lakes totally froze up there. But anyway, we went up. We were rushing because we wanted to get there. So we went about the last week of May, I guess it was. And since they had heated storage, we could work on the boat, and we could get everything ready. And they have wonderful cabins right along the water there you can stay in. So we did that until it warmed up, maybe second or third week of June.
June, yeah.
And since we couldn't go to Canada, we headed down Lake Huron because the locks were still going to be closed at the Illinois River until end of October. And our thought was, well, that wouldn't be so bad. We go down, but what if they don't open on time, which was common. So we said, let's just do Huron. We went across Lake Erie, and we spent 3 months on the Erie Canal. We had a blast. Lock 17 wasn't opening until August 14th. So we had a chance to go down the Finger Lakes this time. And for our boat, by the way, going on the Western Canal, we take the mast down and then we can get through. So,
really? I was just going to ask you that question because it's such an immense boat from when you're standing on the dock looking at it that I'm just surprised it can do the Western Erie. And that's great to know because it is a spacious boat. And I've had members, call me and say, it's really important to me to do the Western Erie. That's the historic part, but I want a big boat and I need to be able to get under those 15-foot bridges. So that's great to know that you were able to do that in the Great Harbour 37.
Yeah, the anchor light is 23. If we take the mast down, then we have the bimini up at 18.
Okay,
excuse me, take that back. Yeah.
Okay, the VHF antenna is 23, which
VHF
any
23,
any bridge under 22 feet, we just fold it down because it's a down up sort of thing. The masthead light is 18.6, and we know that for sure because as we were coming down the Champlain Canal, we went through a lock that had a catwalk across the top that was actually 18.5. Quite clear, but no huge damage.
Thought we'd make it, and so did we.
Yeah,
but it didn't happen.
But it just popped the little thing off. I popped it, the little light off. I popped it back on, and we were good to go. But in any case,
like you're so close.
Yeah, so close.
So close.
But with the mast down and the bimini frame down, we are only about 13.4 or 5. So we can sneak under pretty much anything within reason, and certainly everything on the loop.
Even Chicago, even the Chicago River.
Yeah, we have to do the Chicago River with the mast down. Yeah.
Yeah. And you have an interesting story about that too. But let's finish kind of hearing about how you worked your way through the loop because the Chicago's a fairly recent story.
That one's more recent.
So go ahead. You were spending about a month in the Erie Canal, which you said was fabulous, and I love to hear that because I really hope that the Erie can become, kind of the jewel that the Trent Severn is. I hope here in the U.S. we can kind of nurture the Erie Canal to be one of the gems of the Great Loop. And I think this year, since with Canada closed for most of the season to U.S. boaters, I think it gave many an opportunity to do the Erie Canal that otherwise would have headed for the Trent Severn. So I'm glad you enjoyed that.
And we found spending more time on it was actually better than the year before when we'd gone from east to west, because there's a lot of hidden gems in there. And the Western Erie, I'd highly recommend. They really have it set up for tourism. I'm not sure they get as many tourists as they could because of people-sized boats, but even if you had to rent a boat sometime to do that, I would recommend it because the people are so good.
It's worth going up for a season, going the whole length of the Erie Canal, turning around at Tonawanda, and going all the way back. It's just enjoyable, and every time you pass something, you'll find something new.
So we hit the end, and it was still too warm to come down. So we went up to Lake Champlain, almost to the border. And then came down the East Coast and went back to Florida for the winter. We had plans for some maintenance and a couple of repairs in St. Augustine. He's laughing.
Some of those repairs were required.
By the time we got there, they were.
Yes.
So we enjoyed the East Coast this time because we were on the West Coast last time. Played around until May. We left Jacksonville in May and then took our time getting around because we were waiting for the floods to come down. And we decided, you know what, it's going to be, he tried to tell me it was the same distance or maybe shorter going up the rivers, but that's really not true. Not from where we were.
My calculations were off by only about 1,000 miles.
So, but I still think it was a really good experience because you learn navigation with the tides and on the intercoastal waterway. But when you get on the rivers, it's a totally different kind of maneuvering and it's a different kind of navigation. And we had the pleasure of trying many parts of it with no markers at all because they were all wiped out by the floods.
That's another unique thing or another feature of flood stage or early right after flood stage is half the marks aren't there. The ones you do see you can't trust, and most of the ones you see are going to be on the bank. And the most dangerous ones are the ones you don't see that pop up in front of you like a breaching whale.
I had one of those.
Yeah.
Holy moly, scared the crud out of me. And luckily, I turned downstream. I saw this thing it looked like a fish, like a giant carp. I thought swimming up the river like this, except he was right on the top of the water, and I thought, no way, no way. So I turned downstream because he was going upstream, and I said, okay, I'm getting away from this guy. It turned out it was a red buoy. As soon as I got to the side of it, I guess the water pressure was moved or something, and I saw 3/4 of the red buoy just pop up like that, and I was really glad it didn't hit us.
Those things are a lot bigger than you think they are.
And that was in the middle of the channel. That was not off to the side.
Yeah.
So I don't know what a barge did to it, but it pulled it along probably. Yeah. So you learn a lot of different kinds of navigation. So then we started up the rivers. We came through Chicago all the way, the regular route through Tenn-Tom, Kentucky Lake, Ohio, Mississippi, Illinois. And then we went up the east side of Lake Michigan, which was really cool. With the idea that we'd hit Drummond Island. We met a lot of people coming down, so that was really nice. And we actually because we saw the early birds, we got to spend a little bit more time with them, and then we saw the groups. Went up to Drummond Island, had a little celebration, came back to Mackinac Island and had a bigger celebration.
Yeah. More friends there. Yeah.
Well, we stopped at Mackinac on the way up. So it's Mackinac, run over to Drummond Island, get our gold flag, have a little celebration because not very many people there. And some of the people that were at Mackinac was still there. Like Lucky Me, for example. They were still there.
Yeah.
So we have to celebrate. So we did.
So you did a full loop clockwise from Drummond Island back to Drummond Island. And you had done a part of the loop counterclockwise from, I'm thinking, if I have this right, St. Pete to Drummond Island.
Correct.
So now you're headed back south kind of with the flow of loopers. Yep. So as you have left Drummond Island and proceeded south, when you get back to St. Pete, you will then earn your platinum flag. So definitely a unique feat. How many miles would you say that you'll have completed once you get to that platinum point, or how many did you complete to get to the gold? Because you did a little back and forth there.
We've got over 12,000 right now. I think it'll be around 14 or 15,000 miles. But we've had a lot of we had that whole cruise up the East Coast and down to Chesapeake and down that doesn't really count as part of the loop. Yeah, that was kind of a pre-trial or a pre-loop effort. Or an aborted effort. Yeah, but so we learned a lot.
One of the stories you shared, and for those of you who are loopers and have been to our Looperpalooza event that we did a few years in a row in Fort Myers, that phrase, of course, we stole from Lollapalooza, which is a music festival in Chicago. And Steve and Carol, you just had the perfect timing to be taking your big old boat through the Chicago River during the Lollapalooza Music Festival. So tell us that story.
We did not plan this. I didn't even know Lollapalooza was in Chicago, or even that it was even occurred in Chicago. We were just coming up, and minding our own business, and getting to Anchorage, the next Anchorage, and planning the next day. And it just so happened we came through Chicago or into Chicago on a beautiful, warm summer afternoon, Sunday, of course, weekend. And everybody and their second cousin was out there in everything from paddle boards and kayaks to electric boats, little runabouts, pontoon boats, party boats, and then the probably 24 huge tour boats they have going up and down the river, and they were all full.
They're like converted barges.
It was like playing Frogger in the worst sense, And,
we didn't see any of the architecture. I'm taking pictures in both directions.
Everybody says, "Oh, look at get a good glimpse of the architecture. Look at the bridges and all the historic stuff." And I'm just trying not to run over these people who are renting kayaks and don't even know how to paddle them. It was terrifying. And then we got to the the pool in front of the lock that goes out to Lake Michigan. And that was even more chaotic because there are all these, I mean, there's cigarette boats, there's people who on pontoon boats, some of them are kind of half hanging on, you know, not to fall over. A couple of, there were 2 mega yachts, or, you know, things that were like 90 feet long. Yeah. And then there were 2 or 3 of the big giant tour boats. And they're all they're not staying still in this collection area. It's a big, wide area, but they're all moving around in chaotic movement. And I'm trying to avoid running into things.
And there's no space for the people to come out of the lock yet.
Yeah,
I mean, the lock is just about ready.
They're all milling in front of the gates. So when the gates open, and the big tour, of course, the rule is the commercial boats have first priority. So they came through first and kind of cleared the way, you know, a path. And I was kind of hiding over on the side, thinking, you know, okay, I'll be nice and, you know, quiet in this corner. And it turned out a fireboat was coming through, and I happened to be blocking his slip. So I got a little polite radio call to get the hell out of his way, and which I did. And then there was a mad scramble to fill the lock before it closed again. And
usually the lock masters are in charge. They tell you who they want to go first or something. These guys didn't say a thing.
Totally quiet. It was, you know, I did my usual reporting. Hi, this is Jadip requesting, you know, transit of your lock at the next opening, et cetera, et cetera. Got no response back. And, you know, we've been through hundreds of locks now, and this was a totally different experience. And I've never, the lady behind us, yes. Some poor lady in a runabout. There were like 6 people in this, you know, 16-foot or 18-foot bow rider, and she asked if we had a toilet on board. And I said, okay, yeah, we do. And I said, do you mind if I use it? I went, I don't think, you know, that it would be prudent to have you climb on board from a boat. And of course, we're in the lock now. The doors are closed and everything's sloshing around. And going from one unstable platform to another one, you know, I'm sorry, lady. You know, I felt bad for her, but, you know, I didn't want to have her fall in the boats in the middle of the lock either.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, rather dangerous. So those of you watching have probably caught on to the idea that some of the more stressful or more challenging times also sometimes turn into the best stories and the best memories. But, and Cam has a question. Let's talk about some of, you know, the more serene best memories, maybe not the stressful times. But, you know, I'm wondering what some of your favorite moments are. And Cam wants to know what your favorite stops or sightseeing, you know, what are some of the don't miss places along the loop? So let's start there. Let's start with Cam's question. What are some of the must-do or sees that you came across while you were on the loop?
Well, I'll cite my favorite stop, and I'm certain Carol's is a little different. But we got the opportunity to go down Cayuga Lake, and we stopped at Ithaca at the Alan Treman State Park Marina there.
Which is the Finger Lakes, correct? Off the Erie Canal?
It's a Finger Lake, yeah. It's one of the 2 Finger Lakes you can, well, I think you can get on Onondaga too, but in any case, Seneca Lake has 2 locks, extra locks to it, and one of them was not functional at the time we came through, so we never made it to there. But we made up for it. We stayed there, and we rented a car, and we went over to Watkins Glen, which is the big feature of Seneca Lake, and walked that, which is a magnificent hike. It's just marvelous. And even though COVID was there, they had a trail going up one side of the canyon and then coming down the other, and it was all one direction. So it was very well managed and just beautiful, beautiful. You know, like dozens of waterfalls. I still haven't gone through all the film I took. And of course, Carol takes 10 photos for every one I take. But, and then we also went to the Corning Glass Museum, which does not, it sounds like a real snorer, but it is amazing. When you buy a ticket, it's a 2-day ticket. And you can use up 2 whole days going through that thing. It took us 2 hours just to get through the gift shop. And that's because they have all this art glass for sale, and it's just stunning.
glass, not corning.
Yeah,
It's corning too, but it's all kinds of glass.
yeah, everything from Phoenician glass, which they have. I mean, they don't just say, this is about it. Here's like 15 examples of this very, pre common era.
And we have a lot of demonstrations, which were actually closed when we were there, so
Yeah.
we needed to see them.
But that was a tremendous stop for us.
We thought 3-4 hours,
Yeah,
maybe 5 hours. We went there at 10 and we closed them down at 7.
Yeah. And we were running on the last little bit to make sure we got to see everything.
They're all over the world. They have expositions and stuff from all over the world, which are amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Well, Steve, I love that you picked kind of an off the beaten path kind of spot that many loopers don't get to because they don't do that western portion of the Erie or take the time to go to the Finger Lakes.
Mm-hmm.
So I love that. How about you, Carol? Any highlights or must-see places?
Well, no, because that's on the western. I don't want to say that.
Oh, okay. How about?
I think one of the things that's a little more common when Canada opens back up, is sometimes there's some anchoring areas up there that we stayed in one island that had like a little bay and there was a little opening this way, and the storms that can come up in Georgian Bay are pretty amazing.
For those of you who have charts, it's in the Bustard Island group.
Okay, yeah, I couldn't remember the name.
Yeah.
And we went in there probably 3 days waiting for the weather, and we had rocks and trees, and the granite up there is just amazing. And we had the whole little bay to ourselves.
Wow.
It was absolutely amazing. We took the dinghy down one day and went across to one of the little towns. That was a little bit of a rough ride, but it had
we go over to Snug Harbor, I think it was. I can't remember.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But just anchoring out in the quiet areas like that is one of my favorite things. I love it when you can get out and you can look at the stars, and even during the Pleiades, I think it was, there was the Pleiades meteor
shower.
Yeah.
Meteor showers.
Yeah, we had one night that was absolutely clear, and when you get away from city lights, a long way away from city lights, you'd suddenly go, wow, there's a whole bunch of sky up there I don't get to see very often.
Yeah,
it's really,
amazing.
Really
And I
beautiful.
saw, more than a dozen in 10 minutes. It was just amazing.
No counting satellites.
So I would say, if you're not, we weren't familiar with anchoring that much, certainly not with this boat. And one of the people that we met in one area told us about anchoring with tying your tail basically to the trees, or tie, and so
which is kind of a Georgian Bay thing.
Yeah.
We don't do that in a lot of places on the loop, but yeah.
So that's what we did to stabilize ourselves in the winds. And then when there were multiple people coming in, which they did the last day that we were there, we were stable. So you can learn from other people, and you can learn a lot of different ways to anchor that we hadn't necessarily read all about. So that was one of the favorites for me.
Great advice. Yeah. So Eric, it says he likely missed this, but what was the reason for doing the loop clockwise? Just to recap real quick, I think Steve and Carol are the only loopers I know of who are getting fairly close to have completed the loop one time in each direction in pieces. So just a quick recap. They headed out in the normal way, and because of some mechanical delays and some dealing with some not well furry friends, they found themselves a little bit behind the curve at Drummond Island, Michigan, which is on the very northern part of Michigan. So cold weather was setting in. They stored the boat for the winter, and by the time they came back, COVID had started. So going to Canada wasn't possible. They decided to backtrack on the East Coast through Lake Huron, Lake Erie, and go back in a clockwise direction, and have now crossed their wake in that clockwise direction by returning to Drummond Island. So that's why they were going up the Mississippi. Now they are headed back down, and they had initially, as I said, gone counterclockwise like most loopers from St. Petersburg as far as Drummond Island. So now as they leave Drummond Island, they're in Chicago now and are headed back towards St. Petersburg. And when they get there, they will, as I said, be the first loopers I know of who have done the full route in both directions. So a pretty unique story. We are almost out of time. We get chatting on these Docktales, and the time just flies by. So a final question for you both. What did you gain from doing the loop? Has the trip changed you?
Oh, yeah. Especially
Undoubtedly. Carol can make friends with Genghis Khan in about 3 minutes. I've always been kind of an introvert. I've never been comfortable at small talk at parties and things like that. And we have met so many people, so many friendly, open people who want to share, and it's just a pleasure to go out and socialize now, which it used to be a chore for me, and now I look forward to it. That's a huge change, because that's something I've had all my life, and I didn't know you could actually train yourself out of it, but exactly the sort of thing that you can do that with.
Well, and one of the things that I think is really good in boating, and particularly when you have a common goal, and I think that's credited partly to what you do at HLCA, Kim, is because you bring people together talking about something that they don't even think is possible, but they'd really like to think it's possible, and they're all working together. They're helping each other meet a goal, and they find out that they can do more than they thought they could, because this is a lot harder than we thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
I mean, we knew we were dingbats, but
Speak for yourself.
Okay, I was a dingbat. Let's put
No,
it that
you
way.
are. Go ahead.
Because we might have voted in January, and in March I said, "Let's go."
Okay, that was dingbat.
It's just the way life worked out, and the best thing is for both of us that we've had a chance to do something that we always really wanted to do. We were never quite sure if it was ever going to work out. Life got in the way for quite a long time, and it's not one of those things you can just walk away from. You've got your life settled, and you've got jobs, and you've got all kinds of things. Mm-hmm. And when you finally get a chance to turn it off, it took me a year. It took me a year to turn off this drive to actually go and to slow down and to enjoy the slowdown. And we have a thing on our wall that he made that, the most important thing is a plan, and we're both OCD over planners. We try to make backup plans. We have 3 computers in case one dies. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But it's saved our butt a few times. And then the most dangerous thing is a schedule. And because if we try and get somewhere because we said we're going to get there, instead of watching the weather right and doing the safest thing, that's when you do stupid things and you get in trouble, or you get hurt, or something happens. And sometimes we've had a delay for weather, and you know what? It's worked out just so darn good. We discovered something else about the place where we were.
That's exactly right, and that is great advice. And I think what you both said about the ways this trip changed you is so powerful. And I think we are out of time, but that's also a great place to stop with some good advice and some powerful words. So Steve and Carol Churchill, Jadip, or Jadip, depending on how you choose to pronounce it.
I'll accept anything.
Okay,
Yeah.
Well, it's been a pleasure chatting with you. Congratulations on crossing your wake, and we look forward to celebrating with you when you cross for the platinum going in the other direction. But until then, stay safe out there and have a blast, and just continue to enjoy life. And for those of you who have joined us, thanks for being with us. There's a question or two we didn't get to. We'll try to log on to Facebook and answer those in the text when we can. But thank you for joining us, Steve and Carol, again. Thanks, and everyone stay safe out there and have fun. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks.